Well, I'm very happy to introduce Drew Crawford tonight. He is the Positive Images Program Coordinator, and he plans to talk about the services of Positive Images, best practices for allyship, the national political climate for LGBTQIA plus folks, and any local services and service gaps. And of course, like before, we can ask questions. Our history with Positive Images goes back about 7 years when a group of us decided to explore the resources in the community, and we went down to Positive Images and knocked on the door. And they let us in, and we joined in a circle time with the folks that were there, mostly young folks. And then we did some games with them, and they were so positive that it was just became a great resource for us at the church to refer folks to. We also at that time went to PFLAG, which where we met a lot of parents and family members of youth, and they too were struggling with the acceptance of their families, community, and with their churches. And so it was, it just made us more intentional in our belief that everybody is welcome at our church. And so that's why we're kind of here tonight. We look forward tonight to learning more about how we can be allies of Positive Images and increase our welcome and support to families and youth. So I'm going to hand it over to Drew tonight, and I know he's got a little throat, so he's got plenty of drinks to support him. So we'll hand it over to you, Drew. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shirley, for having me here. And thank you, everybody, for being here with us tonight. I think it's wonderful what you do, reaching out to different people in your community to see how you can be of service and how you can make connections. So I'm really honored to be a part of that. And like Shirley said, I am recovering from some kind of non-COVID virus. So I apologize for the coughing and all of the tea drinking, but I'm going to do my best to take care of myself, and I encourage all of you to do that tonight as well. And I'm going to be kind of talking at you for a little under an hour. I have a lot of information to share, but we'll stop every few slides and take any kind of questions that come up. And at the end, if we have time, we can have a little Q&A or discussion if folks are interested in that. And if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Go to my little slideshow here. So yes, we are Positive Images, and we've actually been around for 32 years serving our community, and we focus on support, advocacy, and education for and of the LGBTQIA plus community. We serve the whole county, and we're located in downtown Santa Rosa. Excuse me. We do have a center that is open for any folks to pop in. Like Shirley said, we're there every Tuesday through Friday from 12 to 5 at our center. We provide a few different types of services there. First off, we have our community center, and folks can come in and get resources and referrals. So if folks come in and need housing, employment, therapy, doctors, we obviously don't have that, but we can help them connect to those resources. And we have a local therapist who has a curated list of therapists that provide for LGBTQ folks. And so we connect them with that list if they need. We have a library of donated books and DVDs that anybody can come and borrow from that have to do with LGBTQIA plus identities and experiences. We have what we call a transformation station, which is basically a big closet of donated clothing that folks can take if they need it. It's also a safe space for people to try on clothing that they might not feel safe trying on in a public place. And we have our community meeting space that, when we're not in a pandemic, is thriving with our groups and with different groups that use that space. We're sort of known for our youth support group. So anybody from 12 to 18 can come on a Thursday night. Right now that programming is online, so we can provide them with a Zoom link that they can get on 6:30 to 8:30 every Thursday night. And we try to keep it fresh and fun for them, as fun as you can on Zoom. So we have social nights where we watch movies or play games together. We also have discussion nights and check-in nights. Check-in nights are nights where young people are talking about what's going on for them and getting support from the other youth around those issues. And we saw a need recently for an adult support group because we noticed older folks also needed support. So these are Friday night groups, and they're also on Zoom. And we have a leadership development crew. So young people who are deciding what they're going to do in the Thursday night groups. And we're meeting with them separately and trying to elevate their personal and professional skills. They're learning things like time management or how to facilitate support groups. And they get to decide what happens in our Thursday night groups. I should mention also that our youth support groups, we have several adults in the room, including licensed therapists. And we also do a lot of community education like this. So tabling at events, going to local schools, talking to students and teachers and parents, going to local nonprofits. Our main goal with community education is we want to try to end discrimination against LGBTQIA plus people in our county. And we have a few different partnerships that allow us to put on some fun programming for our youth. So we have a partnership with the Sonoma Community Center, which is a beautiful historic building in Sonoma. And every third Wednesday, we have our queer art club there for anybody from 10 to 17. We have catered food, and we have local artists who are themselves LGBTQIA plus, and they come in and teach the youth how to do different types of art. So we've had cartoonists, sculptors, painters, chefs, all different types of artists come in and work with our youth. And that sort of came out of a camp that we had last summer, a self-expression camp, which is a summer day camp that's art related for teens. We also have a partnership with an organization called North Bay LGBTQIA Families, which serves gender expensive youth and their families 12 and under. And so with them, we put on a picnic every second Saturday. And we have people from the community come in and facilitate an activity. So a guided hike or live music, whatever that person wants to do. And that's for all ages every second Saturday. And we have a partnership with Trans Life, which puts on an annual conference and professional symposium that's for medical professionals, therapists, teachers, and it's all about trans and gender nonconforming folks. There's also a separate conference for those trans and gender nonconforming folks themselves, in addition to the professional symposium. We also partner with PFLAG, as Shirley mentioned. We partner with Transgender North Bay, which uses our meeting space for their group, and Female to Male Sonoma County, F to M Sonoma County. So those serve, the first serves trans women and the second group serves trans men. So they use our group meeting space and our Zoom. So we have a few community agreements that we ask that folks follow just to make sure that this is a safe space for everyone. Asking that you come with positive intent and that you assume it of others. I'm asking you to be respectful to each other, to not have any judgments about me based on my experience or identity. And in turn, I will not make judgments of you. You also have permission to make mistakes. If there are questions that you're not sure how to word them, go ahead and take a risk and ask that question, since we all agree to have positive intent. We follow what we call Vegas rules. So that means what people will share here stays here, but what you learn here, you may absolutely take with you and share with other folks. I'd like you to stay present and connected and to practice self-care, since some of these topics will be heavy. And I'm asking you to have an open mind and open heart to different lived experiences than your own, different identities than your own. And hopefully you'll walk away with some of these outcomes. A deeper understanding of LGBTQIA plus identities. Maybe you'll have a deeper understanding of mental health considerations for our youth, adults, and elders. Would like you to learn strategies to become an effective advocate or ally, and to learn about different local and national resources for LGBTQIA plus people. So here's that acronym, LGBTQIA plus. The acronym has changed just as our language has. So do our language that we use to talk about ourselves. So you might hear me just say LGBT or LGB, depending on if I'm talking about different research, maybe different sets of people that were surveyed. We like to use this long acronym just to show that we want to be as inclusive as possible. And that's why we add the plus. The plus just means some people might be in our community, but might not feel represented by those letters. And so the plus just means there is room for inclusion and for, change and shifting as a community. This is our current pride flag. We changed it a few years ago. We added a few colors. In 2018, we added white to represent the impact of HIV and AIDS. We added pink and blue to represent transgender folks. And we added black and brown to stand for all the people of color who have been at the very forefront of our fight for equality. So that's an acronym I'm sure that you've heard. This is one that you might not have heard, and it is SOGI. So SOGI stands for sex assigned at birth, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. So some people in this might be a part of the LGBTQIA plus community. Even if you are not, you can still relate to this because, every person in this room has a SOGI. Every person has a sex assigned at birth, a sexual orientation, a gender identity, and expression. So sexual orientation, we're talking about who we like, who we love, and how we identify it. So you're probably familiar with a lot of these terms, but I'm just going to go through them all. So someone who identifies as a lesbian is a woman attracted to other women. If you hear that someone is gay, usually we're talking about a man attracted to other men, although that might also include lesbians. Somebody who identifies as bisexual or bi is attracted to gender that are both different and similar to their own. And then someone who identifies as pansexual or pan is attracted to people of all different gender identities and expressions. Today is Pansexual Awareness Day, actually. So pansexual people are attracted to people of all different types of gender identities. Someone who identifies as queer just means that they have a gender identity or a sexual orientation that is different than what society expects. So it's sort of an umbrella term for anybody who's not straight or anybody who might be living outside of the gender binary. Historically, as many of you know, it was used as a derogatory term, but we have reclaimed it as a symbol of pride. And so it is absolutely okay to say queer community or queer and trans community. I'm going to be saying that because to me, LGBTQIA plus is a lot of letters to say. So queer and trans is another way of saying that. The Q also stands for questioning, somebody who's examining their own relationship to gender or their own sexual orientation, taking some time to figure out who they are. And the A stands for asexual and aromantic. So someone who's asexual or ace doesn't usually feel sexual or physical attraction to other people. Someone who's aromantic or aro doesn't usually feel romantically attracted to other people. Aromantic people might feel the feelings that we feel toward family and friends, that type of love, but they might not necessarily feel that love towards a partner. Any questions about anything on this slide or previous slides? You can just shout them out if you have them. So before we go any further, it's important that we talk about the distinction between sex and gender. Often we're taught that these are the same things, but for many of us, these are different concepts. So sex, we're talking about what a doctor assigns you at birth based on physical attributes, based on your hormones, your chromosomes, your body parts. This is different than the concept of gender, which has two parts: gender identity, meaning your own internal perception of gender, your experience with it, and what gender means to you. And then gender expression, which is our
It's raining.
external display of gender, the way we dress, the way we talk, the way we act, and also the ways that other people read or experience our gender, the ways that other people see our gender. This is different than sex. Sex and gender are two different concepts. And so we have our cute little friend, Gender Unicorn, to show us the difference here. So you can see Gender Unicorn is thinking about their gender identity, whether they feel on the inside like they are female or male, or perhaps a combination of both, or maybe even neither. These are all meant to be sliding scales, so someone can fall anywhere on any of these lines, depending on how they experience gender. Gender expression, meaning how someone represents themselves, how they behave, how they dress, how they act. So that could be feminine, masculine, or a combination of both. And the DNA strand symbolizes what sex someone was assigned at birth. So did the doctor say that they were female or male, or perhaps intersex when they were born? And notice here that Gender Unicorn has two hearts. So the orange heart is who we are physically attracted to, whether that's women, men, both, maybe non-binary people or trans people, and then who we're emotionally attracted to or romantically attracted to. For most of us, these are the same. For some people, they are different. Any questions about Gender Unicorn or sex versus gender? So if you hear me say the word cis, I'm probably not talking about my sister. I do not have a sister, but I'm usually talking about somebody who's cisgender when I say that. That just means the sex that you were assigned at birth matches your gender. So a baby is born, the doctor says, look at this sweet baby girl. She grows up to identify as a woman, to live as a woman. That person is cisgender. The majority of folks are cisgender. We do not want to assume that folks are cisgender or transgender, however. And for folks who are not cisgender, those folks, their sex they were assigned at birth does not match their gender. Those are transgender folks. So if they live as women, if they identify as women or as femme, they could be a trans woman. That is a person who was assigned male at birth, or what we call AMAB. Conversely, if someone identifies as a man or is masculine, we would say that person is a trans man. They were assigned female at birth, or AFAB. AMAB and AFAB can be used for anybody, regardless of whether they are cis or trans. And under this umbrella of transgender folks, we also like to include non-binary folks. So non-binary folks feel like they're not 100% male or female. That also means for them that the sex they were assigned at birth doesn't match their gender. So that's why they're included here. There are many different types of non-binary folks. I'm just going to be talking about a few of them today. And like I said, it's important. We should never put one of these labels of non-binary or trans on someone else unless we know for sure that's how they identify. We want to allow people to self-identify. So we've got through the LGBT, we're at the I. What does the I stand for? Intersex. So someone who is born intersex has a body that is different than what a doctor would say is a typical male or female body. There are actually about 40 different ways that people can be born intersex, whether it is a different arrangement of their chromosomes, a different level of hormones that usually manifests itself puberty and later, or whether they have different combination of body parts. From what we know, at least 2% of the world's population is born intersex. That is about 150 million people. The same number of people who are born with green eyes or naturally red hair. So chances are, if you know someone who is a redhead or green eyes, chances are you also have met or know someone who is intersex. However, this number is probably much higher because we know that many intersex people are not told that they were born this way. Often a doctor has made a decision on their parents' behalf without consulting them. And so this number is probably a lot higher. California is a state now that forces doctors to talk to parents before they make this kind of decision. And so that is no longer legal in California. Yeah. We like to use this circle to symbolize intersex pride because a circle is perfect, complete, whole, just the way it is, just like intersex people are when they're born. So intersex people sort of show us there might be something more to gender than just a binary system. And when we look at the world through a binary lens, we can tend to leave a lot of people out. So with gender, we're taught at a very young age that blue is for boy and pink is for girl, that those are mutually exclusive and opposite, and that there's no other way to be. Many of you might know that, pink was for boys and blue was for girls in the 1800s. And so these are things that have shifted with our society. And so other people like to say that, gender is more of a spectrum with boy and girl still opposite, but now with some room for difference and variety in the middle. Other people like to think about gender more as a continuum. So no longer opposite, male and female, but instead many different varieties and different ways to identify and live in terms of gender. For non-binary folks who would say that they're not 100% male or female, their experience is outside of this binary, maybe somewhere in the middle here. Some different types of non-binary people are maybe gender fluid people or gender flux people who would say that they're gender changes through time. Also, gender non-conforming folks who feel like their expression of gender doesn't line up with what society prescribes in terms of gender roles or norms. Someone like Jonathan Van Ness from Queer Eye would identify as gender non-conforming. And then we have this label of two-spirit. Two-spirit people are Native American folks who feel like they embody both masculine and feminine spirits. Two-spirit people sort of show us that non-binary identities have been around since the beginning of human history. Here in the Bay Area, we have an annual Two-Spirit powwow with Two-Spirit people from all over the country coming together for ceremony and community. It's important that that label is reserved for Native American folks, and folks who are not Native American would not want to appropriate that term. Any questions about those last few slides? So what is transitioning? That is the process that some trans people go.
Drew, Shirley wanted to ask a question. Hold on.
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Drew, that we a group of us watched a short YouTube video on a child, and it was called Tom Girl as opposed to Tomboy. And it was explaining how, we accept that girls can be tomboys, in their play and in the way they dress. But this was a male child who, it was all about his parents accepting him as Tom Girl, and why not? It was very fascinating.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna watch that.
Yeah, Tom Girl.
Yeah, it's fascinating how we accept, tomboys as part of our culture, but we don't even really have a word for it.
No.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So transitioning, why do some people transition? Transitioning can ease a feeling of gender dysphoria, which is a mismatch of somebody's body and their experience of their gender. Relieving that dysphoria can change lives and can save lives. There are two main types of transitioning. Usually when we're talking about younger people who are transitioning, we're talking about a social transition. So that is trying to change how others view us and refer to us, whether that is changing names, changing pronouns, changing the way that folks dress. And then we have medical transition. So this is usually talking about folks who are going through puberty or older, right? So any steps medically that folks are taking to align their gender identity with their body, whether they're taking hormone blockers, hormone replacement therapy, or undergoing any kind of surgeries. So when we talk about medical transition, a main type of that is HRT, or hormone replacement therapy. So for folks who are assigned female at birth, they might begin to take testosterone in the form of an injection or a gel. Now they have implants that folks can get that slowly release the testosterone. Whatever type of testosterone folks use, the main goals are to stop menstruation, to redistribute body fat, increase muscle, deepen the voice, and stimulate hair growth. For folks who are AMAB, they might begin to take estrogen in the form of pills or injection. And so those can make skin softer, redistribute fat, decrease muscle mass, decrease hair growth, and promote breast growth. And when we talk about surgeries that trans people undergo, top surgery for AFAB folks, I had a friend who just had top surgery today. That means a removal of the breast or breast reduction in order to flatten or masculinize the chest. And for AMAB folks, that usually means enhancing the breast to appear more feminine or larger. And when we are mentioning bottom surgeries, that means procedures that affect the genital area. So for AFAB folks, that might include the construction of a penis or a scrotum, a metoidoplasty or a phalloplasty are the two main types. And for AMAB folks, bottom surgery might include the reconstruction of the penis into a vagina. There are, oops, sorry, I'm having some difficulties here with my screen. There are lots of different types of surgeries depending on someone's body and their needs. It's important to note that some trans people don't want or need medical transition to feel affirmed in their identities, and that is absolutely okay. There is no one right way to transition, and what trans people choose to do with their bodies is their business. For some people who do want to pursue medical transition, they might come across barriers to accessing the care that they need. For instance, not having enough finances to be able to take time off after surgery, meeting a medical gatekeeper who doesn't allow for that surgery. And even in California, it's still legal for private medical institutions to deny care. Family support could be lacking for folks, or a lack of aftercare. They might not have the healthcare or insurance that they need to cover it. They might have a job or housing insecurity. They might be at an age that makes it more difficult for them to recover or access that care. In Sonoma County, even though we have lots of doctors and therapists who can provide gender affirming care for trans folks, we do not have any locally trained surgeons. And so folks do need to leave the county to access surgery. And folks might undergo barriers in the form of weight. So they might be asked to be under a certain BMI, to be under a certain weight to undergo surgery, or be asked to lose weight first. Medical transition can be inaccessible and unaffordable. Often we treat it as a luxury, but because it can help save lives, it should be treated as a human right. Any questions about medical or social transitioning? So when we are talking about pronouns, it's a really important part of how to affirm and how to support people who are LGBTQIA+. Traditionally in English, we have he, him, his, or she, her, hers. In Spanish, él or ella. For folks who might feel like he or she or él or ella don't work for them, they might use what we call gender neutral pronouns to refer to themselves. So instead of he or she, they might use they. In Spanish, they might ask to be called ella or ellas. Down at the bottom, we have what we call neopronouns, which are pronouns that folks have created essentially to be referred to. And there are many different types of neopronouns. These are just a few examples. So the first set, we would say sie, here, hears. The second, sie, them, ziers. And the third set is em, ears. So using these in place of he or she or they. We have a local artist named Maya Kobabe who wrote a book called Genderqueer. And Maya uses this last set. So for example, we could say E wrote a book called Genderqueer. Air book was a graphic novel. So unless you know someone who uses neopronouns, they might sound different to you, but chances are if you meet someone, you would pick it up pretty quickly. Why are names and pronouns so important? They are a really basic part of all of our identity, if you think about it. It's not a choice, it's not a joke, but it's a really important part of who we are and who that individual is. We no longer say that pronouns are preferred or what is your preferred pronoun, just what are your pronouns? It's stated as a fact of our identity. How can you be supportive of someone's identity? Try to use the name and pronoun that they have asked you to use. You can also share your pronouns and ask people's pronouns when you meet them. If maybe you are not sure of what their pronouns are. So you could say, hi, my name is Drew. I use he, they pronouns. What are your pronouns? Or what about you? That's a perfectly respectful and polite way for you to ask somebody what their pronouns are. You can also add your pronouns to your email signature. I see a lot of teachers in our county doing this. You can also add them to your Zoom name. Thank you, Shirley, for doing that. You can add them to your social media bio. That not only shows other people how you want them to refer to you, but also show that you are an ally to folks. So here's a quick pronoun practice. This is Zach from the Try Guys on YouTube. Zach uses he pronouns. So we would say, he is really cool. I like him a lot. That backpack is his. This is Maggie, Zach's partner, uses traditional she pronouns. So we could say, she is really cool. I like her a lot. That backpack is hers. And this is my coworker, Joy, who uses they pronouns. So we could say, they are really cool. I like them a lot. That backpack is theirs. Using they as a singular noun in place of he or she. For folks who use a combination of pronouns like myself, this is Elliot Page, who uses he, they pronouns. So we could say, he is really cool. I like their acting a lot in the Marvel movies. A combination of pronouns just means that person would like you to use those pronouns, switching back and forth. This is India, who uses they pronouns. We could say, I like them a lot. They play the character Angel on Pose. And this is our friend Alok Vadmenon. I recommend listening or reading Alok's work. They wrote a book about non-binary people. We could say, I really like their Instagram. Chances are you might make a mistake with someone's name or pronouns if they are new to you or new to that person. This is called misgendering them. It is okay to make mistakes. Nobody is perfect. I honestly still misgender people, even though this is my professional role. We have a lot of young people who change their name and pronouns often. And so it is okay if we're not doing it intentionally. And there are things that we can do to make it easier for ourselves and for that person. So if we've misgendered somebody, what we can do is, we might feel bad about it, but we don't want to make it a big deal because we don't want that person to have to comfort us in that moment. Instead, if we correct ourselves and move on quickly, or correct that person who has misgendered them, try to use the correct name and pronoun as soon as possible. And later, maybe thank them for helping us get it right, for being patient with us. So for example, if Sam Smith is here, and if I said, hey friends, the singer Sam Smith is here. If I said, he's a really great musician and artist, I have just misgendered Sam Smith. I would then not want to say, Sam, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. Please forgive me, because I don't want to make it awkward for them. Instead, I just want to say, they're a really great musician and artist. I'm so glad they're here with us today. Using their correct name and pronoun quickly, moving on, not making a big deal out of it. Later, I can say, Sam, thank you for helping me get it right. What really matters is that we're making an effort to respect that person. Any questions about pronouns?
Yeah,
Go
Drew, I just wanted to give you a little heads up. We are hoping to end about 8. We're hearing in your conversations about how we can be an ally, particularly in these last few slides. I do want to make sure we have some possibilities, for some questions afterwards. So I don't know. I just want to let you know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I am like running way behind, so I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, thank
So why
you.
don't I start with how to be an ally, and then we can kind of
Thank you.
back if we have time. How does that sound?
Thank you.
For sure. Thanks for keeping me in line. So, so there's a lot of bad news, as I'm sure you all know, about all of the laws that have been passed recently. We've seen nearly 240 anti-LGBTQ bills filed this year. So we've seen a lot of bad news lately. The good news is that there are things that we can all do to show that we want to support, that we want to help. An ally is somebody who is not queer or trans, but somebody who stands up for equality. Often they can be the most powerful and effective voices in the movement because they tend to have some privilege and ease moving through the world. So for a queer and trans person to see a symbol like a Progress Pride flag or an equality sticker, as we see here, for us to see this sign can be a really big symbol to show us that we are welcome, that we are included in that space. That's a really easy way to show that you're an ally. You certainly do not have to be an expert to be an ally. You do not have to know all of these statistics, all of these labels, but there are some best practices, what we call the ABCs of allyship. So you want to always allow for self-identification. You want to let somebody come out to you or tell you how they identify first without putting a label on them. You also want to respect people's basic dignity. Never want to ask them about their body parts, have you had surgery, or anything about their sex life. Those are big no-no questions for any queer or trans person. You want to use folks' correct name and pronouns always. And you do not want to assume a person's gender identity. You don't want to assume the sex they were assigned at birth based on their behavior or the way that they act and talk. If you're a really good ally, you're educating yourself and educating other people, telling other people what you have learned, and doing some, following some folks like Alok if you're on social media, following someone like them, learning about what is going on with these anti-LGBTQ laws being passed and telling other people about what you have learned. These are the best practices or the ABCs of advocacy. So sort of level up from being an ally. If you're a good advocate, you're assuming that we're in the room. So talking about queer and trans people as if we are there with you and not othering us, including us in the conversation. If you're a good advocate, you're being open-minded to maybe some different labels, different identities that you haven't heard before or that you're not familiar with. Also, respecting people's confidentiality and privacy is very, very important because we know that if people are outed against their will, that they might be put at risk, that their lives might be in danger. And so if someone comes out to you which says, look, I'm not out at home or I'm not out, at church yet, you certainly would not want to tell other people that they came out to you. We also want to try to develop inclusive spaces by putting up those signs of support, Progress Pride or rainbow or equality sign, reviewing maybe our church policy, our procedures to make sure that people are included. practicing inclusive language habits, saying things like people, folks, friends, instead of ladies and gentlemen, instead of boys and girls, trying to think of gender and gender neutral language. And if we're good advocates, we are exposing homophobia, exposing transphobia, or maybe calling people into conversations instead of calling them out, so that we can begin to have a dialogue about how, what are our similarities rather than what are our differences. So I think I'll talk about resources now and gaps in resources, and then maybe we can get to a Q&A if that sounds good. So that's us up at the top. We have a good website. We have a really good Instagram page. We also have a Facebook group, and that phone number you can call and leave a message and we'll call you back really quickly. We're also at the center downtown Tuesday through Friday from 12 to 5 every day for drop-ins. A local organization that supports transgender Latina women meets the first Thursday of every month at the Lombardi Santa Rosa Community Health Campus. And this organization, Aging Gayfully, actually it's a class at the JC put on by our friend Buzz Hermes, who's a really great professor and a LGBTQ elder in our community. He also has a group called the Sonoma Valley LGBTQ Seniors. And another organization that is similar to us, they do a lot of social and leadership, community education as well, is LGBTQ Connection. We work closely with them on different projects. And for anybody who is thinking about seeking out a doctor or a therapist to undergo gender affirming care, the Santa Rosa Community Health Gender Clinic is a really great resource. This last organization, Face to Face, is they've been around for over 40 years, working with folks who have HIV and AIDS. They also provide free HIV and AIDS testing for folks. So these are our national resources. So Trans Lifeline is a really great hotline and website that folks can go to. They're known for their hotline. So if a trans person like me were having a really rough day, or if I just really needed support, I could call that number and talk to another trans person immediately to get mental health support. The second organization, the Trevor Project, they say it gets better. They have a really great website and a hotline. They have a text hotline also, which is great for young folks. So anybody who is LGBTQ plus can text that number and get immediate mental health support. Gender Spectrum is an awesome organization in the South Bay that serves parents and educators. They also have support groups online for youth and parents as well. And they do annual conferences for folks. For folks who are ACE, the Asexual Visibility and Education Network is a really great resource. And PFLAG is a wonderful resource that's in almost every town in America, and it's for parents, family members, loved ones of queer and trans folks. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the share here. And then if folks have any comments or questions, I'd love to hear what's on your mind.
Peter.
Hi, Drew. Hi, can I ask first?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. That's very informing. So what do you think, what's the greatest need for our LGBTQI plus community? And how can church help?
Thank you for asking that. I think that's a really great question. And even in California, where we have all of these protections and, these laws are not being passed here, so we are protected as queer and trans people. We've still seen that youth are turning on TV, are looking at social media, and they are seeing all these laws, and they are sort of internalizing these feelings of shame, and it's affecting their mental health, even if they do live here, even if they have supportive families. So we have seen the research shows that affirming families, affirming behavior is the biggest step that we can take, is the best thing that we can do to improve life outcomes. So that just means, telling someone that you care about them, or telling them, thanking them for coming out to you, or helping them find resources. Like there is a research project called the Family Acceptance Project, San Francisco State, and I'll put it here in the chat. They have a really great website with a poster that you can print out for free that has these affirming behaviors, things that you would say or do for someone to tell them that you affirm their identity as LGBTQ+. So those are the biggest things that we've seen to show people that, they are worthy and that they are welcome. And, in your church, I know for me, I grew up going to a Methodist church, and I'm from West Virginia. And so I couldn't go back to that church and feel included there, but if I go to a Methodist church here that has a rainbow flag up, like for me, that is the biggest signifier of me being affirmed and welcome. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is showing signs of support and telling people that you are accepting and affirming of their identities. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
I just want to say I liked the part where it said assume we are in the room, and I think that is something that over the years perhaps our church has not done, is assuming that we do have family members or people who are in attendance have family members who are I'm going to say queer, because it's been very quiet. And so I know when we were going through this whole process of welcoming, we were surprised at how many people reached out to the core group who were doing this to tell us that they had a family member, or my brother, or my, all these different things came out, but they'd never felt comfortable before saying it in church. And for us to try and move into a situation even more so, to be openly allies, is something that I would, this is part of trying to move us all forward. The other thing is I liked the idea of the, the welcome, where we're not talking about men and women or come along here, boys and girls, because I know from being a teacher that I stopped saying, let's boys line up and girls line up and boys and girls. We stopped doing that a number of years ago because, it helped all children to feel comfortable without any kind of labels or anything. It was just, children come this way. And so anything like that could be done in you know, a church situation with our kids or our youth, or that type of thing, is interesting, you know, for us to think about for sure.
Yeah, we like to joke that cowboys and queer people are the most inclusive because we say folks and y'all, and that don't leave anybody out, right?
Right.
Thank you for bringing up those points, Shirley.
I do have one other question. I'm one of the questions here. The local PFLAG that I've been involved with, or some of us have been involved in for many years, Lynn and Janelle have finally retired. It's been a long haul for them. And I know that there isn't a local PFLAG group anymore. I'm just wondering if, I'm not sure if you knew about that, but whether the Positive Images group would be able to restart something like that, or you know, I don't know what your feelings are on that.
Yeah, we heard that recently, that they were, you know, disbanding, retiring, and we also heard that the organization name PFLAG didn't really offer a whole lot of, you know, guidance for them, and so you wouldn't necessarily need that label. So we do have some like existing parent groups through, there's one in Sebastopol at West County Teen Clinic, and we have a friend who's starting one in Sebastopol soon, but unfortunately that's really all we have. And so
Yeah.
we are looking into trying to build that back up somehow. But our main, I didn't get to talk about gaps in services, but I wanted to mention two big ones that we have, if I can. And so the first one is serving Latinx, serving Latine or Latinx people in our community. We've seen that that's a big gap that we have, where we're not really providing to that community. And so we are working on making partnerships with organizations like Humanidad and Corazon to create programs for Spanish speaking folks and for Latinx folks. And the other big one is connecting to elders who are LGBTQ, because we have a lot of elders who are feeling really isolated, who have, you know, been facing isolation for a while. And so we're looking at partnering with Fountain Grove, and we see a need for that, and for particularly for intergenerational connections between elders and youth. So those are our two big gaps and two big goals that we're working on improving. And we're working on two big grants right now that hopefully will go through. With that, those are our two big programming goals that we want to expand on. But so I'm really glad that you brought that up, Shirley, about parent support, because that is certainly something that is really important.
Yeah, it was kind of sad at the last meeting, though. There was somebody who, it was only their second meeting, and somebody who it was their first meeting, and you know, it was closing down. So they were like, you know, but they were actually going to get together themselves. They took each other's phone numbers and they were going to try and help each other. So that was good. I'm not sure if there's any other questions from anybody. Or... Doesn't look like it. Well, I just want to thank you, Drew, for your time, especially with not completely well. And I just want to say that you're going to be in the Pride Parade, and we are too, I'm sure.
Yes, that's
so
awesome.
This is our fourth year. We, of course, not during COVID, but we have our signs and there's going to be a whole bunch of people there. So if we see you, we'll be cheering you on and we'll be there. And so I just want to say thank you very much. And we will hope to have that art show in the fall in our gallery that was scheduled way back. And I might be able to get hold of that group, the Sonoma, at the Sonoma Community Center, and have some of their art in our show. So we're hoping to do that. So thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you so much, Shirley. Thank you, everyone,
Thank you.
for being here tonight.
Thank you. Very good
Thank
job.
you,
Well
Drew.
done.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Well.